My God, how can this be happening right now? David Wellington yelled into the phone, his voice echoing through the hallway of the 45th floor of Wellington Industries. The millionaire CEO paced back and forth in his glass-walled office eyes, fixed on a delegation of Chinese executives stepping out of three black cars parked in front of the main entrance. The official interpreter had just called to cancel at the last minute due to a family emergency. In just 15 minutes, senior leaders from China's largest tech conglomerate would be in the conference room to finalize a $200 million deal. $200 million, and it all hinged entirely on flawless communication. Mr. Wellington, I've called every interpreter in the city, said Rebecca, his executive assistant still holding her phone tightly against her ear. No one's available to attend a meeting of this scale on such short notice. David loosened his Italian tie, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. 20 years of building Wellington Industries could go up in smoke, all because of a language barrier. The Chinese were famously strict about formal communication. They would never tolerate a meeting conducted via translation apps or random hand gestures. Then a soft, almost whispering voice emerged from the corner of the room. "Excuse me, Mr. Wellington, but I speak fluent Mandarin." All eyes turned toward Jasmine Parker, 28, who had paused in the middle of wiping a table to listen in. She held a cleaning rag in one hand, dressed in the standard navy blue janitorial uniform. Jasmine had worked on the executive floor for 3 years, always quiet, always efficient, almost invisible to the important people coming and going. The silence in the room was so deep, the hum of the air conditioning was suddenly deafening. Rebecca was the first to break it, laughing awkwardly. "Jasmine, this isn't a joke. We're talking about a multi-million-dollar international deal." David studied her for a moment, as if truly seeing her for the first time. "You speak Mandarin?" he asked, voice heavy with doubt and a hint of desperation. "Mandarin, Cantonese, and a bit of Taiwanese," Jasmine replied calmly, her gaze unwavering. "I majored in East Asian languages at Howard University before I started working here." Jasmine had never imagined that 3 years of cleaning executive offices would prepare her for a moment like this. But all that time wiping down conference tables, she'd been listening, absorbing every conversation, every strategy, watching every move the executives made, especially Rebecca. Rebecca's expression shifted from amused to annoyed. "David, come on. You can't be serious." A janitor running the most important meeting of the year. But David was far too desperate. There was something in Jasmine's posture, a quiet confidence in her voice that made him hesitate. "Prove it," he said curtly. "Say something in Chinese." Jasmine took a deep breath and began speaking perfect Mandarin, her tone fluid and commanding as it echoed across the room. "Woman很荣幸今天在这里见面也希望我们的合作能带来双赢的成果." David stood frozen. He didn't understand a word, but he could feel the natural flow, the confidence, the authenticity in her voice. "What did you just say?" he asked, still processing what he'd heard. "I said, we're honored to meet you here today, and we hope our collaboration will lead to mutually beneficial results." Jasmine translated a respectful standard opening in Chinese business culture. Rebecca crossed her arms, clearly irritated by how this was unfolding. "David, think about this. What will the Chinese think when they see you put a janitor in charge of the meeting?" At that moment, a memory flashed like lightning through Jasmine's mind. 6 months ago, she had overheard Rebecca crying in the ladies' restroom on the phone, saying something about that black girl always lurking near important meetings. Jasmine had pretended not to hear, but she had remembered every word. In that moment that felt like it stretched into forever, David couldn't take his eyes off Jasmine. There was something in her gaze, sharp intelligence, quiet dignity, completely at odds with how she was treated daily. For 3 years, she had cleaned these rooms, absorbed every discussion, and learned more about the company's inner workings than half its management. "You've got 20 minutes to prepare," David said, ignoring Rebecca's stunned expression. "Change into something appropriate and meet me in the conference room." When Jasmine hurried off to change, Rebecca hissed furiously, "You're insane. When this all falls apart, your career goes down with it." But David wasn't listening anymore. For the first time in years, he was about to realize that sometimes the person everyone underestimates turns out to be the most valuable of all. 20 minutes later, when Jasmine returned to the meeting room, a strange and suffocating silence fell over the space. She had changed out of her janitor's uniform into a simple black outfit borrowed from reception. Nothing fancy, but neat and professional. Her hair was elegantly tied up, and she held a notebook in her hand, just like any other executive. "Oh my God, Thomas. the CFO, murmured, unable to hide his surprise. Is that really the same person? Rebecca didn't bother to lower her voice, whispering to her assistant, polishing coal doesn't make it a diamond. Across the sleek glass room, the Chinese delegation had arrived on time. 5 well-dressed leaders were chatting in Mandarin, occasionally glancing out at the Manhattan skyline. David stepped forward for the formal introduction, intentionally omitting Jasmine's actual job title. This is Jasmine Parker, our Asia-Pacific International Relations Specialist, he said, carefully choosing every word. The head of the delegation, Mr. Chun, bowed respectfully to Jasmine. When she replied in flawless Mandarin, thanking him for the honor of meeting and praising their punctuality, a highly valued trait in Chinese culture, his eyes lit up with genuine surprise and satisfaction. In the first 15 minutes, Jasmine interpreted every detail with surgical precision. It wasn't just language, she captured cultural nuance, diplomatic undertones, even the jokes that made the Chinese leaders laugh wholeheartedly. The meeting flowed more naturally than anyone had expected. It was at that moment Rebecca decided to strike. Jasmine, she interrupted with a saccharine, venom-laced smile. Perhaps we should share with our guests your unique career journey at the company. David shot Rebecca a warning glance, but she pressed on. It's truly inspiring to see someone willing to change their life and rise up, if you can call it that. The condescension was unmistakable. Jasmine felt the familiar burn of shame, the kind she'd carried since she dropped out of university in her 3rd year at 18 to take care of her diabetic mother after she lost her job shouldering all the medical bills. Life teaches us that opportunities can come in the most unexpected ways, Jasmine replied calmly, her dignity intact as Mr. Chun began to watch the exchange with concern. But truly, who would have thought that someone who once cleaned this very room 3 years ago would now sit at the negotiating table? She paused, letting the message sink in. It speaks volumes about how our company values diversity in all its forms. The silence that followed cut like a knife. Jasmine saw Mr. Chun's expression shift, not exactly disdain, but an uneasy surprise that knotted her stomach. In Chinese culture, professional hierarchy is held in the highest regard. David quickly jumped in, trying to salvage the moment. What Rebecca means is that we value talent, no matter where it comes from. But the damage was done. For the next 15 minutes, Jasmine could feel the Chinese leaders looking at her differently. They remained polite, continued the translations when needed, but the warmth from earlier was gone. She was no longer a specialist, she had become a curiosity. And in that moment, something crystallized inside her. For the past 3 years, Jasmine had silently cleaned these rooms, while executives discussed strategies, signed million-dollar deals, and made decisions that shifted entire markets. She had listened, observed, learned every word, every mistake, every manipulation, especially Rebecca's. She remembered vividly when Rebecca had lied about quarterly revenue to impress a client, or when she took credit for a subordinate's work, then fired them under the guise of budget cuts. Once Rebecca even exploited confidential information to secure a personal deal. Jasmine had seen it all, heard it all, and most importantly, she had recorded it all. The meeting ended with a vague, half-hearted agreement. The Chinese delegation promised to carefully consider the proposal diplomatic code, for they'll back out if a better option appears. As the guests departed, Rebecca couldn't hide her smug satisfaction. "Oh, how delightful," she said loudly, theatrically, rearranging her papers. "Next time, perhaps we should be upfront about our translator's actual qualifications from the beginning." David's anger was clear, but before he could respond, Jasmine calmly stood up. "Rebecca," she said, her voice soft, but now carrying weight. Before he left, Mr. Chun mentioned something. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really, what's that?" He said he was very impressed by my language skills, but quite confused by the power dynamic in the room. Jasmine paused for emphasis. He asked why the person doing the interpreting wasn't introduced as the lead negotiator. In his culture, the one who holds the language holds the authority. Jasmine smiled slightly. He said he'd like to understand our organizational structure better before making a final decision. Rebecca's expression changed, no longer condescending, but genuinely unsettled. She hadn't expected that her dismissive attitude toward Jasmine would backfire so spectacularly. For 3 years, Jasmine had been a shadow overlooked and ignored. But now that invisibility had become her greatest weapon, because she knew every weakness, every secret, every lie whispered behind the doors of power. And what Rebecca didn't realize was this: every insult, every scheme to block her path, was quietly shaping a strategist, one sharper, colder, and far more dangerous than anyone else in the building. 2 hours after the disappointing meeting, Jasmine appeared again in the executive hallway in her familiar navy blue janitor's uniform, pushing the cleaning cart like she did every day. But this time, every step was deliberate. For 3 years, she had listened to confidential conversations, memorized every detail from forgotten documents left out on desks, especially in Rebecca's office. She knew how Rebecca manipulated deals. She even knew the drawer where she stashed sensitive files without ever bothering to lock them. "Look who's right back where she belongs," Rebecca said loudly, her voice echoing down the corridor. She was standing with Jennifer from accounting, making sure her words reached the nearby directors. After that ridiculous stunt earlier, at least now we know where she really fits in. Jasmine continued wiping down a table, her hands steady, her mind recording every word. What Rebecca didn't know was that during all those quiet nights cleaning her office, Jasmine had seen personal emails left open, overheard calls about shady deals, and most crucially, photographed documents pointing to Rebecca's unethical business practices. The most annoying part, Rebecca kept boasting, is that David actually thinks some janitor could save a $200 million deal. As if 3 years of mopping floors qualifies someone to sit at the table with executives. At that moment, Jasmine's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number written in Chinese. She recognized it instantly. It was from Mr. Chun. "Ms. Parker, I would like to speak with you privately about our company and some potential opportunities for you. Could we meet at Mandarin Cafe on 42nd Street, 10 a.m. tomorrow? I believe I have a proposal that may interest you." Jasmine's heart pounded. This wasn't just a translation gig. It was a door, a choice, an opportunity. Because during today's meeting, she had sensed it, Mr. Chun wasn't just impressed by her language skills. He had recognized her calm under fire, her sharp mind, her quiet strength. That evening, in her small Brooklyn apartment, Jasmine opened a file on her computer titled Wellington Industries, Violations, a 63-page dossier she had carefully compiled over the past 2 years. This wasn't about revenge, it was about preparation. Inside were printed emails Rebecca had thought she deleted, call logs Jasmine had recorded through the security system during her weekend night shifts, photos of documents proving Rebecca had deliberately sabotaged 3 deals with Black-owned companies in the past 18 months. She had seen Rebecca lie to clients, steal credit from coworkers, and block the promotion of anyone she deemed not a good cultural fit. But this time, Jasmine was no longer just an observer. At exactly 10 a.m. the next morning, Jasmine walked into Mandarin Cafe on 42nd Street. She wore a simple yet elegant outfit, the first thing she had bought with the advance payment from the Chinese company. Mr. Chun was already there, accompanied by a poised woman who introduced herself in fluent English. "Good morning, Ms. Parker. I'm Lisa Wong, Vice President of International Development for the group." Mr. Chun started speaking in English, but then smoothly switched to Mandarin. "Yesterday, I was not only impressed by your fluency in our language, but also by your composure in the face of unfair treatment." Lisa leaned in slightly, her eyes serious. "We're expanding into the North American market. We need someone who understands both Chinese culture and the U.S. business environment. Someone who doesn't just sit in boardrooms but knows how to read the games played inside the company," Mr. Chun added with a wry smile, "and someone whose dignity is too great to bow before small-minded people in high places." For 2 hours, Jasmine spoke confidently about market strategy, about the cultural nuances in negotiation, and especially how American companies often underestimate the subtlety of Asian investors. She discreetly referenced some irregularities she had noticed at competitor firms without naming them directly, but enough to make Lisa and Mr. Chun exchange approving glances. At the end of the meeting, Lisa slid a business card across the table. It read, "Parker and Associates, International Consulting," and beneath it a salary figure 5 times what Jasmine had earned at Wellington. "We'd like you to consider our offer," Mr. Chun said, rising from his seat, "but there's one condition." Lisa continued, her voice low. "We'd like you to assist us in investigating certain discrepancies in the Wellington Industries contracts. There is evidence the company may be violating international trade laws." Jasmine clenched the business card in her hand. 3 years of being treated like furniture, and now 2 of Asia's top business minds were offering her not just a job but a strategic alliance. Lisa added gently, "Tomorrow Wellington is calling an emergency meeting. We've just received word the Chinese delegation has officially filed a grievance over the contract violations." Jasmine nodded. Her mind was already made up. That evening, she called her mother. Mom, remember when you told me that patience is the strongest weapon a smart woman has? Of course, sweetheart. Why, I think I finally understand what you meant. Hanging up. Jasmine gazed out the window of her tiny Brooklyn apartment, the same place she had hidden herself away for the last 3 years. Tomorrow, both Rebecca and Wellington Industries would find out those years of invisibility hadn't just built a competent woman. They had created a dangerous one who knew every weakness, every lie, every secret in the halls of power. The next morning, the executive boardroom of Wellington Industries was suffocating with tension. David, the CEO, had just received the official complaint from the Chinese side outlining serious contract violations that could trigger a federal investigation. Rebecca entered with her usual air of confidence, her scarlet suit, and the echo of her heels down the hallway announcing her authority. She had spent the entire night perfecting her speech, fully convinced she could pin everything on the useless janitor David had foolishly brought into the deal. Ladies and gentlemen, Rebecca began addressing the 7 members of the board. I believe we all understand why we're here. As I warned earlier, allowing an unqualified staffer to participate in high-stakes international negotiations was reckless, and now it's cost the company a $200 million deal. Just then, the boardroom door opened. Jasmine walked in dressed in an elegant gray suit, not borrowed, but a tailored outfit she had purchased using an advance from the Chinese company. She carried a leather briefcase and a laptop, walking with the quiet confidence of someone finally stepping into the position she deserved. Sorry for being late, Jasmine said calmly as she sat next to David. I was finalizing a few important documents for today's meeting. Rebecca shot her a sharp glare. With all due respect, David, I don't understand why she's here. This is an executive board meeting, David replied coolly. She's here at the direct request of the Chinese delegation. They want her to clarify certain allegations. Jasmine opened her laptop, her voice steady and unshaken. Mr. Chun met with me privately yesterday afternoon. They've discovered evidence of bid rigging and intentional sabotage of a competitor's contract, which may constitute a violation of international trade laws. Rebecca stood up abruptly, her voice raised. Absurd. She's a janitor. What does she know about executive operations? Jasmine offered a soft smile, but her gaze was razor sharp. The kind of evidence one gathers when they've been invisible for 3 years while people talk freely right in front of them without a second thought. Rebecca froze. For the first time, true fear flickered in her eyes. Jasmine connected her laptop to the projector. The first image appeared an internal email Rebecca had sent to a client 6 months ago in which she leaked confidential information about a competitor's proposal Johnson Company. The room fell utterly silent. Rebecca tried to interrupt, but Jasmine continued, her words landing like hammer blows. The second document shows that Rebecca deliberately inflated project costs for Black and Latinx employees, leading to project cancellation and falsely blaming their underperformance. The screen now displayed a manipulated Excel spreadsheet, internal emails, and audio clips from the company's security system. Jasmine had documented and saved everything. Rebecca screamed, "This is a setup. She's making it all up to get revenge for when I called her out." Jasmine calmly opened an audio file. We can't let these kinds of people think they have the right to enter leadership meetings. We have to keep the company's standards intact. Rebecca's voice echoed through the room. Rebecca went pale. It was a private conversation she'd had with Thomas about keeping the company clean of unfit elements. Jasmine played another recording, this one from just 2 weeks ago, in which Rebecca instructed reception to discard resumes with names that sounded too ethnic. Mr. Johnson, a respected 60-year-old Black executive seated near the head of the table, asked sternly, "Rebecca, is this true?" That. It was taken out of context. I was under pressure to protect the company's image. Rebecca stammered, beads of sweat forming on her forehead. Jasmine responded quietly. Company standards include ethics, integrity, and compliance with federal anti-discrimination laws, all of which have been systematically violated over the past 18 months. David turned to Rebecca, his tone icy. You have 30 seconds to explain why you shouldn't be immediately terminated and reported to the district attorney's office. Rebecca looked around for support, but all she saw were faces filled with disgust and distance. You're making a big mistake, she muttered, her voice cracking. She's just a cleaning girl. David cut her off as our new director of international relations. And you are fired. The room fell into absolute silence. Rebecca stood frozen, swaying slightly as if she might collapse. 15 years of career gone in minutes. David went on. Your access will be revoked immediately. Security will escort you to collect your belongings. And Rebecca... He paused for a moment. We will be forwarding all evidence to the Federal Prosecution Office. As she was escorted out of the room, Rebecca cast one last venomous glance toward Jasmine. You may have won today, but it doesn't change who you really are. Jasmine stared back without blinking. You're right. I'm still myself, someone who watches, learns, and acts at the right moment. The only difference is, now I'm exactly where I belong. 3 hours after the meeting ended, Jasmine was officially appointed Director of International Relations at Wellington Industries. She was invited into David's private office, where he looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. How did you pull this off? Recordings, documents, evidence. For 3 years. Jasmine smiled for the first time in days. When people see you as furniture, they forget. Furniture also has eyes and ears. Rebecca underestimated the power of invisibility and overestimated the worth of arrogance. Looking out through the office's glass window over Manhattan, Jasmine realized something: the best revenge isn't destroying someone, it's building something so monumental that their efforts to bring you down become meaningless. 6 months later, Jasmine Parker sat in her new office on the 38th floor of Wellington Industries. Her desk was covered in contracts in Mandarin, Cantonese, and English. The deals she had negotiated had brought in over $400 million in new revenue from Asian markets. Jasmine, the Korean delegation has arrived, said Jennifer, now her personal assistant, entering the room. They're very excited to meet the woman who tripled our revenue in Asia in just 6 months. From the window, Jasmine saw the city where she had once silently mopped the floors of boardrooms. Now, as one of the youngest influential female executives in Manhattan, she had rewritten her destiny. Annual salary, $300,000. Her mother now had access to the best diabetes treatment available. She had completed her master's degree at Columbia University through an executive program. What about next week's Forbes interview? Jennifer asked, glancing at the packed schedule. Confirmed, Jasmine said, adjusting her navy blazer not out of obligation but by choice. They want to interview me about making the list of the most influential young female leaders in America. Not far away, Rebecca sat in a small rented apartment in Queens after being evicted from her luxury flat in Manhattan. A stack of therapy bills lay scattered on the table alongside dozens of rejection letters from companies she had applied to. The federal investigation concluded that Rebecca had violated anti-discrimination laws. She was fined $50,000 personally and banned from holding any executive position in companies with federal contracts for the next 5 years. Her name appeared in every financial publication as a textbook example of toxic leadership. That morning, she saw the cover of Businessweek. Jasmine Parker, a confident smile, standing beside Chinese executives. The headline read, "The Interpreter Who Reshaped Global Business," a direct slap in the face. At Wellington, David convened an executive meeting to announce the quarter's record-breaking results. Jasmine Parker didn't just salvage our deal with China. He declared she opened the door to markets we previously thought were out of reach. Mr. Johnson, the senior black executive who had witnessed Rebecca's downfall, stood up. In my 40 years in corporate America, I've rarely seen such a powerful transformation as Jasmine's. She proved that talent has no color, no class, and can't be hidden behind prejudice. Thunderous applause filled the room. Jasmine remained silent, remembering the evenings she had mopped the floor of that very boardroom just 7 months ago. That night, in her newly renovated apartment in the Upper East Side, Jasmine received a call from her mother. "Sweetheart, I just watched your interview on TV. You spoke so beautifully about second chances and perseverance." Jasmine smiled. "I learned from the best. My mom used to say people may try to make you feel small, but no one can dim what you know and what you're capable of." During a televised interview, when asked about Rebecca and whether she held any resentment, Jasmine responded firmly with poise and grace. "Rebecca gave me the greatest gift anyone could give. She showed me exactly the kind of person I never want to become. Her arrogance and prejudice taught me that true strength comes from lifting others up, not stepping on them." 3 weeks later, Jasmine appeared at Howard University, the place where her dreams had once been cut short. But today she wasn't returning as a dropout, she came back as the founder of the Second Chance Opportunity Fund, a scholarship for students who had to pause their education due to hardship. No one should have to choose between caring for their family and pursuing their dreams, Jasmine said to a moved auditorium of 500 students. I used to be one of you. I know what it feels like to sacrifice your future for your circumstances, but today I want to use my own second chance to clear a path for yours. The scholarship, partially funded by her own salary, had already approved 20 full scholarships for the upcoming term. Meanwhile, Rebecca sat in a small apartment in Queens, watching the ceremony via live stream. She quietly shut off the screen. For the first time in months, her tears weren't made of anger but genuine regret. Back at Wellington Industries, the place where 3 years ago Jasmine had quietly pushed a janitor's cart down each hallway, the scene had completely changed. Young executives now bowed their heads in greeting. Staff called her boss. Assistants sought her advice for career growth. Most importantly, Jasmine had become a mentor to 5 junior employees, from operations people she had recognized as full of potential, yet overlooked by everyone else. You know what impressed me most about this whole story? David asked her in a one-on-one meeting. You could have used all that information to destroy Rebecca personally, but you only exposed her misconduct professionally. Jasmine offered a soft smile. The best revenge isn't destroying someone, it's building something so extraordinary that everything they did to bring you down becomes irrelevant. Jasmine Parker's story proved one thing. True talent has no race, no class, no title. Steadfast dignity and quiet preparation can overcome any injustice. And most importantly, the greatest power may lie in the people we never notice, the watchers, the learners, the ones waiting for just the right moment to rise. Rebecca tried to humiliate Jasmine with arrogance and bias, but ended up digging her own grave. Jasmine showed the corporate world that real leadership doesn't come from a title, it comes from vision and the ability to see potential where others see limits. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed a relaxing and captivating storytelling experience. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support gives me the motivation to create more amazing content.